welcome back to Gabbin with Jessa. In today's video, we are going to be continuing the Harry Potter book versus movie series. We are halfway done. We have made it to the biggest book of them all and the shortest movie of them all, actually. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is a 2003 novel. This was published 3 years after Goblet of Fire, making it the longest break that J.K. Rowling took in between books, and the largest book of them all, in a continuation of Harry's journey now that everything has become a lot more dark. It was later translated into a 2007 movie that came out the same summer that the 7th and final book of the series came out. So Potter fans were definitely having the best worst year ever in summer 2007. Like with these videos, there will be spoilers, so if you are interested in reading the book or watching the movie, please click off of this now and then come join us for the discussion afterwards. So I have to say that this was actually my least favorite book growing up. I think it's because there's a lot of angsty Harry in the book, and I didn't really like that when I was growing up reading that. I'm like, oh, he's so mean, he's just out there yelling at people all the time. But then when I was rereading it back as an adult, I completely understand where he's coming from. I think it makes sense, his reactions. It still doesn't really, it's still something I don't really like to read, but it's something I understand why I'm reading it now. I'm glad that they actually cut a lot out of this book because, again, this is a big book. And while there are important things in here and some things I think should have been left in, there was a lot of stuff that needed to be taken out, and I agree with how the movie went about it. So one of the first things that we are introduced to is Harry listening to the Muggle news outside of his house, just under the open window, because he's wondering to see if Voldemort is going on any kind of a killing spree. And I thought this was really interesting because he's turning to the Muggle news, not any kind of wizarding news, to figure out if there's anything weird going on with Voldemort, if there's been mass killings or anything like that. There hasn't been anything, but it's really fun and interesting, again, like with book 3, how they were listening to the Muggle news, trying to figure out about Sirius Black and how he escaped and how his impact impacted the Muggle world. Harry was trying to use that again to see if the news would cover it in the same way or if there was anything to cover. We still have the scene with Dudley and the Dementor coming, and then all of a sudden Miss Fig just randomly shows up, and this is her first appearance in the movies, even though she was mentioned way before in book 1, back to book 1, and even at the end of book 4, she's briefly mentioned by Dumbledore, saying that they need to gather the team together now that Voldemort is back. And here, I mean, obviously they need to have her in this movie. They need to continue on with this plot of Harry and the Dementor, but like, she just seems like some random old lady that just shows up. We don't really hear much about her from any of the previous movies. I mean, at least they still did include her in here, even though they completely cut out not just her, but Filch's backstory of being a squib from these movies too. I know there's like a deleted scene somewhere in movie 2 about him getting his quickie magical letter subscription thing, but the idea of a squib and the backstory of it, where it's how the opposite of being a Muggle-born, where you are a non-magical person within a magical household, I think that's a really fun storyline, and again, a different way to see how people are treated of magical minorities. So all the letters are coming in from the Ministry saying how Harry is expelled, and then he's gonna have a trial, and then Mr. Weasley telling him to calm down, don't worry about anything, and then the one letter that comes for Petunia saying, remember my last, it is from Dumbledore. And again, this opens up a very important Petunia plotline from the later books, where we figure out her relationship with Harry's mom. In the beginning of the books, the first few, we just think, oh, she just thinks she's a freak, but that's actually a lot more of their childhood that plays into the part, and Petunia understands that Vernon can't kick out Harry from their household. He needs to stay there. And it's not just for like Harry's sake, it's for the sake of the greater good in a way. Like I said, Harry was very angsty in this book. I think he's a little more mellow in the movie, so I think that's why I liked movie Harry better for this, because it was something myself I was able to tolerate better. Again, I understand why he's angsty, but I like how there's this more mellow, angsty Harry in the movie. It just made it more enjoyable to watch. I could take it in easier. I think the flight of the advance guard all through London is so beautiful. It's so much fun to watch. Again, it's kind of like an added scene, like with the dragon scene of them flying around Hogwarts, but this one I really felt like I was there and flying with them, and I just had so much fun with it, and it was a lot of fun. And I think it's just one of those scenes that you watch and you're like, man, I wish I was in this world too, because they just bring it to life so well. I just want to give a shout out to the twins, Fred and George Weasley, in this, because in the book and in the movie, I think that they're just a whole lot of fun. Granted, a lot of their good lines from the book are left out in the movie, but I still love their movie presence. They're just always a fun time around when they're like apparating just down the stairs, because now they can, because they're both 17, and it's just, I don't know, it's just so much fun, and I love them in the book and in the movie. In this book, we also learn more details on how Percy Weasley left the family and kind of disowned himself, becoming more entwined with the Ministry, which makes sense in later scenes when we see him either with Fudge and the whole trial, or when they're turning Harry in for the Dumbledore's army. We see Percy there, and in the movies we're kind of like, why is he there? Why isn't he with his family? But we get a more impactful response to him joining the Ministry for negative reasons and just saying how everything that his family believes in is false and that he needs to remove himself. And it's so sad, because Mrs. Weasley cries like every night or something, and it's just so heartbreaking to hear. Mrs. Weasley in this book is also very kind of like on edge, because she's very adamant about keeping the kids busy so they can clean everything in the Black household, because she doesn't want them talking with anyone, or to each other, I mean, so they can, you know, not discuss everything that's happening, because I think this is just her way of trying to protect them. It would have been nice to see something like this in the movies, because even though she wants to fight, she's still a mother character. That's her whole thing, and she just wants to protect these children, and she thinks that if they know too much when they're still a little bit on the younger side, even though they are almost of age in the Wizarding world, she still wants to protect them, and I really can appreciate that from Mrs. Weasley. We are also first introduced to Regulus Black, and from Sirius we get a little bit of his background as a Death Eater, which of course plays more a part in the 7th book, and I wish we got a little more of this in the movie too. We for at least a mention or something of him, because I think there's maybe a brief mention when Sirius is showing Harry the tapestry, which was absolutely gorgeous. I thought that was so beautifully stunning, but I don't really remember much of Regulus until movie 7. I think one of my favorite scenes in the movie that they do so well is Mr. Weasley traveling all through London through like the different Muggle transportation, like when they go to the underground and he's trying to get on the subway, or the tube I think it's called, in London. And I don't know, that whole scene of him just trying to figure everything out, it makes me so happy. I love that sequence of them traveling to the Ministry together, because I think the Arthur Weasley actor is absolutely amazing. I also think that the actress who plays Umbridge is absolutely fantastic. She is just so perfect. She makes you want to hate that character so much, because you do in the books, and she brings it to life, and everything about it is perfect, from her little like from the trial scene, like you just instantly hate her, and it's amazing. It's amazing. She's amazing. One plot line that I think was interesting in this was that Hermione and Ron are made prefects when you're in your 5th year. That's when prefects start to happen. We all pretty much figure that Hermione's going to get it, but we also think that Harry's going to get it. And we know why Dumbledore doesn't do this in the long run, but to see Ron so happy and excited to get something like this, it shows us more of Ron's character. I think that there is more to him than just kind of the goofy best friend that out of the other 5th years, Dumbledore still sees him as someone who could be a leader. And I think while Ron maybe not at first treats that wholeheartedly responsible, I think that it plays into his future roles in the later books. It wasn't something that we needed in the movie necessarily, so I think it was okay to cut out, but maybe if they did include this, I wouldn't have minded it. It's a nice way to just include a little something. One thing I think is really interesting that was a different change that I really liked from the book to the movie is that in the book, Moody actually gives Harry the original picture of the Order of the Phoenix, like with his parents and Sirius, while in the movie, it's actually Sirius Black who gives it to him before he leaves on the train. And I really think that made more sense to me. While Moody is a great character and now we actually get to know the real Moody instead of the fake Moody, I think that having Sirius do it is more, it just makes more sense to me of why they did it in that way for the movie, because it's a bonding thing that Harry and Sirius need, and just to continue to show that of what could have been if Peter Pettigrew didn't betray them, or like even if Harry's parents did die, what a father-son relationship with Sirius would be, even though I think Sirius is more of like a fun uncle than a godfather, but still, I don't know, it just hit me in a different way when Sirius gave it to him instead of Moody. So we meet Luna for the first time when we're in the compartment with Harry, Ginny, and Neville, and I think here in the book is where we see a little more of the actual teenage side of these characters. We don't really get a lot of that in the movies because we're focused on the magic and the wizardry and everything like that. But Neville's plant like explodes all over all of them, and then Cho Chang comes up. Of course, Harry still has a big crush on Cho, and now he's all embarrassed and he's like, oh, I wish I wasn't here with Neville and Luna or whatever. But even though that's a very mean thing to say, I think that it shows that he is still a teenager in all this. He's still going through the same things we're going through when it comes to things like that. And it's something that I'm glad the book still incorporated to show that they're just like us. However, I did like the carriage scene better in the movie. I think that was a better way to introduce because of the Thestrals, and I think that was a better smooth transition, but I still appreciate what J.K. Rowling did with Harry, you know, getting embarrassed about in front of the girl that he has a crush on. As I said before, Quidditch gets like no love in these movies, which is fine, whatever, but just as a point, Ron actually does join the Quidditch team in this book. This is where the Weasley is our king chant originally comes from, and while he still has to retry out again in the sixth movie and the sixth book, I think it's fun to see him doing a little bit more, getting a little more confidence. He's been made prefect, now he's on the Quidditch team, and while he's not good at first, he still comes through, especially when the twins and Harry eventually get kicked off because of Umbridge. A lot of the Quidditch elements I think have been transferred to movie 6 because they still wanted to include some of that for some reason. I don't know, I have a lot to talk about for movie 6, but a lot of the elements from this book were transferred into that movie, which is something I've noticed. Also in this book, there's a lot more of the Cho and Harry relationship, like starting out, when they go on their date, when they break up, things like that, and I'm glad that they cut it. It wasn't something I really needed. I'm glad that they still kept in the original kissing scene of the two of them, but this whole relationship thing, I don't really know. It didn't really need to be included. And so I'm glad they cut that part out. I also really like the kind of montage they had of Umbridge taking over the school with the different decrees and her evaluating all the teachers and everything. I think it made a lot more of the chunkier parts of this book become more smooth. I think that's the best way that you can translate it onto screen. And so I really did actually like that. It made things go more quickly and smoothly, and it was just something that I could appreciate from the filmmaking standpoint. A character they left out, which I completely understand, he's not really necessary, but that you love to hate, in my opinion, is Zachariah Smith. I think that he's like I said, a fun character that gets on your nerves. He kept getting on my nerves, definitely rereading this book more than I can remember from before, but I understand why they cut him. But he's just another fun character that, kind of like Umbridge, you love to hate, except you actually do hate Umbridge, whereas this kid's just kind of annoying. But just something I wanted to throw out there. I also really liked for the Dumbledore's Army that Hermione not only put a curse on the parchment, where we see later on with Cho's friend Marietta, after she unwillingly gave up information on Dumbledore's army, she had the word sneak written across her forehead in zits. I think that was a really great way to curse the parchment like that, but I also liked the little fake galleons they had, which had meeting times on it, so they could change accordingly to when the right time was going to be, and it looked like a galleon, so it wasn't really suspicious or anything. And it was a really great just a great way to show how smart Hermione can be outside of academics and outside of what's required. She's so brilliant in other ways that can, and we see, are important to the story, or just maybe a little bit of fun. Again, this is another movie where Dobby is replaced by Neville. Dobby's actually the one that finds the Room of Requirement and tells Harry about it, whereas in the movie we see that Neville stumbles across it after being bullied by Draco and his goons, and he is the one that goes and tells Harry about it. Again, Neville's cheaper than Dobby to put into a movie, and you know, everyone loves Dobby. We would have loved to see more Dobby. I think one thing that's very important to mention here that the book does, that the movie doesn't, is that we get a better explanation from Hagrid about why Voldemort is recruiting giants. We're figuring out that Voldemort is not attacking people, not doing mass killings, because he's trying to recruit them, and how he's using magical minorities to recruit them and saying, look, we need to fight against the magical world. They treat you guys poorly, so come to my side. And I think that's really important to mention because, yeah, he does mention it in the movie briefly, but I think we get a better explanation here on why he's actually doing it and why Dumbledore sent Hagrid out there at first, so he could go and explain to the giants that he needs to be on Dumbledore's side, not Voldemort's side. And I really like this description. I think it really shows that this is more than just a wizard-wizard battle. This is so many different kinds of magical beings that are involved in this war. In the book, we're introduced to Thestrals through a lesson of care of magical creatures from Hagrid. And while this is fun, and I always love to see more Hagrid, I really like the Luna scene better, where Harry and Luna are just stumbling in the forest and she's out feeding them. I think that played a lot better into Harry and Luna's characters, about just the friendship that they build, because Luna does see Harry as a very, very good friend towards the end, especially like in the books, in book 7, when we go to her house and we see all the murals and everything. And in the books, I think that's a little bit lost, whereas in the movies, like, you can see that they have a bond and a connection over their lost parents. After, you know, seeing the Thestrals and thinking everyone's crazy, Harry having everyone like against him, kind of like how Luna is always called Loony Lovegood. And so I really like this Thestral scene. I think it plays more heart into who they are as characters, and I really, really like that. This is also the movie where I realized that Ginny's character development starts to go like way downhill. Ginny is a great character, and unfortunately the movies didn't really play that out well. I don't blame Bonnie Wright, the actress who plays her. I think that was more of the writing and how Ginny just kind of got like sidelined in the end for other characters, but I think it was in this movie I started to really realize, hey, she's not getting credit where credit is due for her. And that really does upset me. I think one of the biggest complaints of this movie from a general Harry Potter fan standpoint is leaving out all of St. Mungo's. This is the first time we get to meet Neville's parents and see just what Bellatrix Lestrange did to them. Yes, she tortured them to the point of insanity. We hear about that, but we don't really get to see it. And then we see how his parents don't even remember him. They're still alive, but they don't even remember him, and how sad it really is, and how his grandmother still feels proud of her son. She still wants Neville to live up to what her son did. And while Neville is trying his best to live up to his father and his mother, I know that it can really be hard on him because of what he is going through. And it's just a scene that I think really sticks with a lot of people. Plus, we also get to see Lockhart being all crazy again, so who doesn't love that? So just quickly to mention, we are introduced to the portrait of Phineas Nigellus, who becomes a much bigger role in the 7th book. And I really like to see his introduction here because it makes so much more sense come the 7th book. But that plot line from the movies is kind of left out too, so I guess it doesn't really matter, and it was smart to leave him out, but just something that would have made more sense in the 7th movie. I loved in the book that they replaced Trelawney after she gets kicked out by Umbridge, which still all happens. They replaced her with Firenze, the centaur from movie 1. I don't know, every girl's now like fallen in love with him or whatever, but I just think it's funny. I don't know, I loved Firenze and Trelawney. I don't know. I just think it's funny. I think the fireworks scene that was in the movie was very well done. I love the music that plays behind it. I think that it just really brings to life who the twins are, and that was amazing, and it looked great on screen. But I wish they included like the whole mayhem scene, because they do a little bit of the fireworks first and then they go like all out. They tell Peeves, you know, to keep bothering her or whatever. You can even see the teachers are in on it with the twins because they all hate Umbridge too. And I don't know, it just gives me more love for the twins because they are my favorite characters. And it's just something that I think puts a smile on your face. So I think the movie did really well. I just wish they included more. I'm not even going to talk about Snape's worst memory scene when Harry goes into his memory when they're doing occupancy lessons because it's terrible. And again, this is not the last time you're going to hear me say that memory scenes are terrible in the movies because it was like 15 seconds when it was actually a really good part of a chapter. Everything about the OWL exams and their future careers, basically anything with school, again, is cut from this movie. I could see it being cut. It's not necessarily something that needs to be in there, but like, you don't know what Harry, Ron, and Hermione want to do after school. We're not really told anything like that. So we go off to the Department of Mysteries, and I think that this scene, again, is so beautiful. I love the way that the fighting sequence was done in this. However, I do wish that they included more of the different rooms, like with all the freaky brains and destroying the time turners. I wish they included more of that stuff, but I appreciate what they can do in the movie. There's this one line from Sirius that isn't in the books that I absolutely loved, is when he says, "Nice one, James," to Harry. And I kept going through the book. I couldn't find it again because that scene just warms my heart every single time, and it just makes everything about what's about to happen to Sirius just so much more sad. And it's something that I'm glad they included in the movie. I think it plays a lot into the bond that Harry and Sirius had, but also that James and Sirius had. Sirius's death from the book to the movie is slightly different. In the movie, he is hit by Bellatrix with the killing curse and then falls backwards into the veil, whereas in the book, he's just hit with a curse, kind of like a stunning curse, and just falls backwards into the veil. Yes, it does come from Bellatrix. Yes, he still does fall through the veil, but the veil is ultimately what kills him, not the killing curse. The Dumbledore Voldemort scene was super cool. I think it was really cool, again, to just see all that put onto screen and have them fighting between each other. Oh, I think it was so cool. But I think the real thing that I loved was Dumbledore explaining everything to Harry on what's going on. While I think it was good in the movie and they didn't include most of it, I don't know, there was something about the movie that just felt like it was missing something. Like, I wish I got more from it. Even though majority of it was there, I just needed more. I don't know what it was, I just needed more. And I think maybe some of those things are like saying that Neville could have been the chosen one because he's also born at the end of July, and just because of a choice, because of a prophecy that Trelawney actually gave, Voldemort chose to make Harry the chosen one. And I don't know, there was just something like that I needed more in the end. But I still think it was really good. It's really hard to say for Order of the Phoenix because while this wasn't my favorite book growing up, I still understand why Harry was so angsty in it, but I also understand from a movie's perspective that you can't make all of this into a 2 to 3 hour film. You just can't, especially when 3-hour films weren't really common back then. But I still love both of them. I think that the movie wins out slightly only because it did leave out some of the things I didn't think were necessary, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, do everything like that. And until next time, keep on gabbing.